Sara Carter, investigative reporter, has been in the forefront of all of this, Fox News contributor. Welcome, all of you. All right, Greg, congrats. The book is finally here. All of this is chronicled in your book, but now everything is corroborated, completely corroborated, and we only have a small fraction because they redacted everything out of these 412 pages.
You know, if you turn to page 159 of my book, I recite out of the FISA warrant application how they disguised that it was Hillary Clinton and the Democrats who were paying for this through Fusion GPS, sort of money laundering it, over to Christopher Steele, a foreign national. And as I write, you would have to be telepathic to comprehend the facts underlying this disguised footnote. And so they were deceiving the court. They were concealing evidence. Had the judges actually known that Hillary Clinton had paid for this dossier, had they known the true origins of this, they would have said, hey, wait a minute, we can't sign this. If they had seen the whole dossier, they would have laughed and said, get out of this courtroom before we hold you in contempt of court, James Comey.
Who are the people now, everybody that we've been talking about, whose signatures are on this?
Well, you've got James Comey, Sally Yates, Andrew McCabe,
Rod Rosenstein.
And you played a clip a moment ago that's very important. He said, when we affix our signatures, we are swearing that the information is true and accurate. They knew it was untrue, and they hadn't verified it, and they didn't disclose that to the court.
No, they actually tell the judge the opposite. They say they did verify.
And the other thing that people are missing is you can't get a renewal of a FISA application unless you present new evidence. Now, I've read all 412 pages of the 4 applications. There is no new evidence.
Well, there's a lot of redactions, though, but there's no indication that there was any new evidence at all.
None whatsoever.
All right, what are the laws potentially in play, and who broke them?
Well, there is a very important law known commonly as abuse of power, and it's a violation of the law to use your official position to basically interfere in somebody's constitutional rights, and that would be the right of privacy in terms of Carter Page and spying on him with wiretaps. It would also be a violation of Donald Trump's constitutional rights to run a free and fair election. If they are trying to stop him from winning by doing all of this, that's abuse of power. It's obstruction of justice, and because they signed the FISA warrant under false pretenses, that is also perjury. So there's a whole bunch of crimes.
Sarah, let's go and get your general thoughts on all this. Well, number one, your reporting has been dead on accurate. You deserve a Pulitzer because you're way ahead of the curve on all of this. The media is trying to downplay this as much as they can, and they want to go back to last week's news and talk about Putin because they've been on the wrong track. But this really was about a dossier put together by a Russian national by a foreign national full of Russian lies for the very purpose of impacting a presidential election and undermining a president-elect and a president. That's why. That's what this is.
It is. And what's so stunning about all of this, and we've been saying this from the beginning, that if they were accusing the Trump administration of being unwittingly or wittingly used by the Russians, which is what former CIA Director Brennan and Clapper have tried to say over and over again, it appears that it was they themselves who were being the agents of Russia and dividing our nation and creating the chaos and the turmoil that we've seen for over the last year. And it's a violation of our constitutional rights. I mean, what happened with Carter Page in this FISA application, and you're right, Sean, a great number of pages out of this 412 pages, which I've had a chance to go through as well, has been redacted. And what the House Intelligence Committee wants now, and they've sent this letter to the president on June 14th. It was released Sunday night. We've talked about it on your show. For over a week now, I've been saying the 19 pages in this FISA application, which were not released, by the way, in the documents that were released on Saturday. So those have not been redacted. I mean, those are redacted. Those have not been unredacted.
What do you hear the 19 pages would show?
It would expose the entire FISA debacle. It would show how they misused the FISC courts. It would expose to the American public exactly what happened. And because that is still considered classified, I can't have details on that. All I can say is that the president needs to get those documents declassified. Those documents need to be presented before the American public so that the American public has the opportunity to make their own determination and decision. I think based on what we've seen so far, we can say without a doubt, Greg Jarrett's book is right on the money. And what's happened here has exposed something that we never thought could happen in our own country. We thought this could only happen in other nations, not in America. I think what makes us lucky is that we do have a constitution, that we do have a right to stand up to our government, and the fact that President Donald Trump won the election opened up this can of worms so that hopefully we can clean out these agencies, clean out this system, and not have this happen again, because this is extraordinarily dangerous.
We also learn in all of this that people like Adam Schiff is nothing but a pathological liar, and that the Democrats, when they claim the Steele dossier was not heavily relied upon in the FISA warrant, that has been one big, repeated lie by the Democrats. Even the unredacted material shows that the dossier, which was paid for by Hillary Clinton, that was the bulk of the information. We now know that the Yahoo News article sourced to Christopher Steele himself was also cited extensively. And the FBI falsely denied Steele was the source for that article, the author of the article, Michael Isikoff. It's basically the same sourcing to make it seem like it's two separate sources that they're presenting to the FISA court. That was done purposefully.
Well, we also know that Steele lied to the FBI, and then they didn't disclose that to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. They continued to renew every 90 days this application with whatever else they pretended to have against Carter Page to continue surveilling him, but they never once disclosed, according to what we've seen in these 412 pages of what we can see, that Steele had lied to the FBI and he was no longer a credible source. Steele, who himself said he couldn't verify anything in his own dossier. It's really incredible.
And then you go a lot further in this, and the FBI falsely denied Steele was the source, but more importantly, the FBI absolutely never verified any of the material that we now know to be false that was given to the FISA judges. They didn't tell the judges that it was, the same source for both the article and, of course, the dossier.
Right.
And they never, ever, there were no indications. They never told the judges who paid for it.
In light of the facts we now know, page after page of this FISA warrant application is one deception after another. In the preamble, they sort of lay out that Carter Page, was a foreign agent, and that he was recruited back in 2013 and so forth. They never disclosed to the court that, he really wasn't, and he was never charged, and in fact, he helped the Department of Justice and the government prosecute Russians and obtain convictions for their operations here in the United States. Now, that would have been a critical fact for those judges to know that, wait a minute, Carter Page has been helping the governments against Russians. They make the flat-out assertion that he is a foreign agent for the Russians, and all of their evidence is simply this dossier. I mean, they basically rubber-stamped the dossier, which is totally fabricated, and put it in front of the court. But they didn't disclose what it was all about. They didn't disclose that it was all a lie, and they hadn't been able to verify any of the information contained therein. And you're right about the circular sourcing and reporting. I mean, they lead the judges to believe that the dossier information is independently verified by a separate source. No, it was a reporter who was quoting the original source of the dossier, Christopher Steele. I mean, people should lose their license to practice law at the Department of Justice for this.
It's got to be more. If they can get away with this, we don't have a country. We don't have a constitution.
Right.
We'll continue. More Greg Jarrett, Sara Carter on the other side. And as we continue with Greg Jarrett and Sara Carter, Greg's new book is out, The Russian Hoax. It's here. The illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, frame Donald Trump, in bookstores tomorrow. Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Sara Carter, investigative reporter. You know, with all this talk about Brennan and the House Judiciary Chairman wanting John Brennan to testify, news that John Brennan specifically asked for my surveillance, if you don't mind taking a trip down a little selfish lane here. And apparently Susan Rice might have asked to unmask me or done so at the behest of John Brennan. What does that mean for me, Greg Jarrett?
Well, we don't know whether this indeed happened or not, but I wouldn't be surprised because, you know, we know that the government is capable of doing this, surveilling
would I ever be able to find the truth of this?
It's the government. Good luck. No, I mean, you know...
if they did do it, they would have to justify it.
Well, they would...
But unmasking, there's no justification for
look what
unmasking.
they did to our own James Rosen at Fox News. I mean...
and then what they did to General...
Michael Flynn. I mean, they prosecuted him for lying, even though the FBI agents who interviewed him said he was telling the truth. He was not lying. But Robert Mueller doesn't care about that because all he wanted to do was go after somebody in Trump's circle, if not Trump himself. And so, you know, and look, this is the intelligence agencies of the United States. It's cloak and dagger. Everything that they do is hidden from the American public, and they're very adept at that. So if they were surveilling you or other American citizens without the proper legal authority,
Sarah,
you can bet they covered it up.
All right, we'll give Sarah a chance to respond on the other side of this break.
When news breaks, you get the inside story that no one else has. And the behind-the-scenes chatter that the mainstream media doesn't even know about. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
Was there any choice there? Why, if this was salacious, and this particular part of the dossier unverified, still unverified, by the way?
Yes. So far as when I got fired, it was unverified.
Did you tell him that the Steele dossier had been financed by his political opponents?
No, I didn't even think I used the term Steele dossier. I just talked about additional material.
But did he have a right to know that?
That it had been financed by his political opponents? I don't know the answer to that. It wasn't necessary for my goal, which was to alert him that we had this information.
Well, I think the counterintelligence investigation was launched before the revelation of the dossier.
Okay, that's important. So the chronology is that the counterintelligence investigation predated the dossier. So the way he's setting it up can't be true.
Well, it's a little distorted in my mind because I think the dossier would be a part of this a counterintelligence investigation that was already underway, which, of course, was buttressed by our intelligence community assessment in the first place. So, and that was a challenge for us, I suppose, at the end. We just ran out of time as to whether or not the allegations, particularly the salacious ones, could be rebutted or confirmed. Well, again, bear in mind the dossier is actually a compilation of 17 separate memos, and some of those were corroborated in our report from completely different and valid sources. Others material in there, notably the salacious material, could not be, and as far as I know, never was validated. So some of it was valid, but some of it couldn't be, and the big hang-up was we could not attest to the veracity of the second and third order sources that were drawn on to compile it.
Do you know if the Bureau ever relied on the Steele dossier as part of any court filings, applications, petitions, pleadings?
I have no awareness.
Did the CIA rely on it?
No.
Why not?
Because it wasn't part of the corpus of intelligence information that we had. It was not in any way used as a basis for the intelligence community assessment that was done. It was not.
Just lying. Just outright lying. 25 now till the top of the hour. That last one was Brennan, right? Well, that sounded like a lie to me, Greg Jarrett.
Yeah. I mean, I don't believe anything that John Brennan says. Because, as I write in my book, The Russia Hoax, he was the propagator, the instigator of the dossier. He was peddling it to everybody on Capitol Hill that he could talk to, including Harry Reid, who was then minority leader of the U.S.
By the way,
Senate.
peddling what is unverified, false Russian propaganda to impact the presidential election, and he's the CIA director.
Brennan meets with Harry Reid. 2 days later, Reid fires off a letter to Comey saying there's collusion between Trump and the Russians. You need to investigate, and Reid leaks that letter to the media. And when the media the Washington Post used the term collusion when they reported it, but nobody else really picked up on it. So then Harry Reid does it again right before the election. And after Trump is elected, then, it's off to the races. Brennan and Clapper were the people propagating the false dossier.
And they still have security clearances, which I think are now justified taking away. Should Rod Rosenstein survive here in light of what we now know he did in all of this and the fact that he propagated these lies to the FISA court judge, and he's the one that says that if you put your signature there, you're verifying everything that's said?
Yeah.
Sarah, let me ask Sarah. Sarah.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something we've hit on over and over again. He was the signatory on the fourth application to renew. That was in June. And when you think about this, Sean, he would have had access to every other FISA application beforehand. He can't come up with the excuse that I didn't read it. I left it up to Tashina Gohar, my right-hand gal, to look it over, and then I just signed it. No, this is a FISA application to surveil somebody that was part of a presidential campaign. He was a part of this entire episode of events that unfolded that allowed the United States intelligence apparatus to basically spy, wiretap, surveil Carter Page. And that did not include just Carter Page. That included secondary and tertiary people that were talking to Carter Page or talking to people who talked to Carter Page. And they know this very well. And when you talked about, Sean, whether or not we're being surveilled, whether or not people were listening in on conversations, once it's overseas, and especially with you, Sean, anybody that you talk to overseas, when you're traveling overseas, they don't necessarily need to get a FISA application to collect the information that you've put out there through the telephone wires, right? Or through.
Well, but if I'm doing reporting or if I'm seeking answers, for example, we did go and interview Julian Assange because he was such a key player. And, I actually think I'd like to see what evidence he has about where he got his information, which I think would be, I can't believe to this day that Robert Mueller still hasn't requested an interview with him. And frankly, the House Intel Committee ought to do it too. And secondly, because if he has evidence or he has proof that, in fact, it wasn't Russia or it was Russia, he told me it wasn't Russia, it wasn't a state party, I think we deserve to know the truth at this particular point in time. I would think he's the one guy that has sure evidence because he's the one that printed it. He's the one that put it up.
That's absolutely true. And remember, that is also included in the FISA application warrant, right? So they list WikiLeaks as part of their evidence, but yet they've never talked to Julian Assange. Yet they've never exposed
Why not?
exactly how Russia did this. Yet they never actually had the DNC server, which the FBI...
Why not? Where is that server? Where? How do you get... Where is the server? I mean, how do you get to just say to the FBI, no, I'm not giving you my server, we're going to hire an outside company?
Mueller and his team of partisans will never make a move to try to uncover anything that disabuses their narrative of Trump-Russian collusion, and that would be it. So they're not going to look for. They're not going to look for the server. They're not going to interview. They're not going to interview Julian Assange and put it up. Of course not, because what they might find out is that their narrative of Trump-Russian collusion is belied by facts.
Well, and there's some news that's breaking today, right now, as a matter of fact, is that Sarah Sanders confirming that President Trump, is looking to take away John Brennan, James Comey, Susan Rice, Andrew McCabe, and a bunch of other people's security clearance.
He should. He absolutely, positively should. The fact that they still have a security clearance at this point, that means they have access to what? Go in there and cover up some of their deeds? I mean, that's insane.
Or utilize the information to make money as pundits on, cable news channels. I mean, these are people that have now...
Have you been told you were surveilled and unmasked, Sarah Carter?
Yes, I have.
And how many other people that you know? I've been told it many times.
To what extent?
I don't know the extent either. You could say affirmatively I have been.
I can say affirmatively, yes, that it was not through a FISA. What I have been told is that your conversations overseas were collected. Yes.
Okay, but what about the unmasking? Why would Susan Rice unmask me, a patriot?
That I do not have confirmed, Sean, but what I can say is that it wouldn't be difficult to figure out who you are. If they have the conversations before them and they've unmasked foreigners in those conversations, American person, personality 1, or U.S. person 2 on those documents, it would become very evident to them.
But once it becomes evident that I'm not doing anything nefarious, aren't they supposed to minimize the call and not identify me?
They are supposed to do that unless they feel there's a special reason warranted. Remember, the laws changed under Obama, and they expanded. They expanded to include journalists, doctors, lawyers, clergy. What used to be sacrosanct is no longer sacrosanct. Remember, under the Obama administration, those laws were expanded, and those rights were taken away.
Even though all of those calls would be in my direct role as a talk show host, which includes, being a journalist, which includes being an opinion host, which includes all the above. Greg.
Look, just remember what James Clapper testified to. He was asked, is the intelligence community spying on Americans through metadata? And he said, oh, absolutely not. And the senator who posed the question knew that he was lying. And when Clapper was confronted with that, Clapper was forced to admit that he was lying and had to correct the record. He should have been prosecuted for perjury because he was testifying under oath at the time. So, I mean, that speaks volumes, Sean, about what the intelligence community does. They will surveil and lie about it.
Why hasn't Carter Page been arrested if they did all this surveillance?
Because there was never any evidence, as I point out in the book.
And then if you are willing to lie to a FISA court judge, do we ever get to hear from those judges? How do they feel about being lied to?
No, because they're secret and their operations are completely secret.
Then what about the people that we now knowingly gave the judges unverified, uncorroborated, bought and paid for Russian lies? I mean, all the talk about Russian interference and Russia collusion.
They should be prosecuted if they broke the law, and you and I have talked about the laws.
And all 4 of the people that signed these warrants should be prosecuted.
If they did not follow the law, then absolutely they should.
Based on what we read in these 412 pages, they presented it in a way that they knew was false.
Right, and they used a document they had yet to verify, and that is, in my view, a violation of the law.
That's a requirement of the law.
Yes, it is. And so, and they never thought they'd get caught because, first of all, they always assumed that everything with FISA is secret, and second of all, they assumed Hillary Clinton would be elected president. And so, and they were trying to help her every step of the way. Mm-hmm. And there's something about the arrogance of power. The more you have it, the more you exercise it corruptly. And that is what they have done. And it's really sad and unfortunate when you have hyper-partisans in nonpartisan jobs like James Clapper and John Brennan.
The name of your book, I think, says it all. The Russian hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, frame Donald Trump. Isn't this all the effort to frame Trump? Because beyond the first part was to try and prevent him, there was an effort to stop him. There was an insurance policy in case he won.
That's right.
And all of these FISA warrants go to the heart of how they tried to do it. And they were willing to use a bought and paid for political document full of Russian lies to get their way and delegitimize and take out a sitting president.
Yes, and the pivotal moment was July 5th, 2016. Comey's standing in front of television cameras across America. He is clearing Hillary Clinton, even though he knew she broke the law and had put it in his document not once, but twice. And while he's speaking to Americans, his FBI is meeting secretly with Christopher Steele, the author of this fictitious anti-Trump dossier funded by Hillary Clinton.
Why
and the
are they
Democrats.
all holier than thou? People like Comey and Strzok and Brennan. Why do they all think that they are the great arbiters of truth?
They think they're smarter than Americans. Comey
think they're super patriots.
Yeah, he thought he knew better than those deplorables who voted for Donald Trump.
You mean we smelly Walmart people?
Yeah.
Is your book for sale in Walmart?
It is for sale in Costco and Target and Sam's Club, and I believe it's at Walmart as well. And I'm going to go to those places, and I'm going to meet those people who are buying my book. And God bless them for doing that, because they're just like me.
When did they ever get so arrogant to think that, that they can think of us as irredeemable, deplorable, smelly Walmart people that cling to our God, guns, Bibles, and religion, Sarah, and then try and steal a presidential election?
Because these are such narcissistic, unbelievable people that live in a bubble in Washington that don't even know what a gallon of milk costs and don't even care about the American people. And unfortunately, Sean, now they're exposed. Maybe that's fortunately. Now they're exposed. And the American people can now fight back the right way and vote who they want in office and make sure that this place is cleaned up, because it is a swamp. And unfortunately, it's hard to deal with, but it's something that we have to live with. It's something that we have to expose. And I'm grateful to be a part of that.
Yeah, honestly, everything we've said is true. Everything they've told you is a lie. Greg, congrats on the book. Bookstores everywhere. And Sarah, thank you. We'll have you both on Hannity tonight.